I just wanted to walk you through the breathing gears that I use with clients quite a bit. This system comes from Brian McKenzie. He started the company Shift Adapt, and he's been training, especially endurance athletes, for a long time. And this is really the best system I've seen for helping athletes become really aware of their breathing during cardio and endurance sessions, okay? This is gonna be a little bit different for every athlete, how they interact with this, but I think this is a great starting place, and then you can kind of play with it depending on the athlete or depending on what works for them. So first thing to look at here with the breathing gears is as intensity goes up, you'll see we go up in gears this direction, okay? So gear 1 is gonna be nice and easy, and then gear 5 is gonna be that high intensity piece. Now, as we move up, I'm gonna go over each one of these gears and kind of, the specifics of each one. But there's a couple takeaways just right off the bat. One, as you go up from gear 1 to gear 5 here, you're gonna move from easy, slower exhales to bigger, more powerful exhales. So as you get more and more intense, you're going to be pushing out exhales harder and harder. The other thing you'll see here is there's gonna be a lot more focus on nose in and nose out, gear 1. By the end, it's gonna be all mouth breathing, right? So moving from nose to all mouth, moving from easy exhales to powerful exhales, okay? So gear 1, really this is, not just all the way up to zone 2 here. You can see it says zone 2. Not just zone 2, but 99% of your day, you're gonna be in that zone 1. Even an easy nose in, nose out. You wanna think about this with your athletes. If you wanna program this gear for them, you can give them cues to keep their breathing in and out their nose at an even pace. So say that they're on the Echo bike or something, you can have them breathe in 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4 with the pedals. You can do the same thing on the rower, time it even and slow, or even in running. You can have their steps be even and easy, timing their steps with an even breath, okay? Now, as we move up into gear 2 here, you're just gonna be breathing harder. It's still nose in, nose out. You're just breathing heavier, breathing harder, okay? And really, if you adapt, you'll see this says all the way up to zone 4 here. That is with somebody who's really adapted to nose breathing. So you can absolutely do this. I did this over the course of a month, adapted to be able to breathe all the way up to zone 4, nose in, nose out, even with a deviated septum. You can do this. It just takes time to actually be able to hit zone 4. You're gonna have athletes skip straight up to gear 4, gear 5 early on unless you're really focused on making the nose breathe no matter what. But it's gonna be hard at first. So then we move up to gear 3, gear 3 here. Gear 3 is that transition gear between nose and mouth breathing. So now we're moving from in and out powerfully through our nose to in your nose, out your mouth, okay? That's gear 3, in nose, out mouth. Now this gear is gonna be more challenging for some people than others. I personally have a really hard time with gear 3 because when I start to struggle with this nose breathing here, when I start to struggle in this zone, in this gear 2, what's really hampering me is my ability to get air in, okay? And it's like my septum will collapse, things like that. So breathing in my nose, out my mouth doesn't help me a ton. My CO2 tolerance, my air hunger tolerance is high enough where I can keep nose breathing until I can't get in enough air. Some people who have wider airways, my wife who ran cross country was telling me about this, that she has a pretty easy time with gear 3. She can breathe in enough where she can hang out, nose in, mouth out for quite a while and not need to go up to gear 4. Because gear 4 now we're breathing in and out our mouth. But you'll see now this is easy again, okay? So when you kick up to mouth in, mouth out, it's kind of funny. You don't have to breathe as hard because we're opening up that airway. And now I can come back to it's pretty easy mouth breathing. Even though you're breathing more, the intensity is higher, you should be able to breathe easy there. And then we bump up to gear 5 where now, there's not a lot of cues anymore. It's just move the air. Now the big key here is we want to still emphasize the exhale, okay? So just make sure, I'm gonna write it on there for you. The focus is not on just getting more air in. You would do that kind of breathing I just did if you're trying to get back down to gear 4, but in gear 5, you want to be dumping the air out, getting the air out. That's only 5% of your training. We're not hanging out here all day long. Gone are the days of just high intensity training day in and day out, crushing yourself. We're kind of over that. It's more that 80-20 rule, okay? I know we're not the same exact percentages here, but if you add them all up across the board, 80% of the time, we're training, we're in nose breathing. That lower 5% time, you're getting after it. So maybe once a week, we touch gear 5 here, okay? So that's how we're gonna transition up these gears. And that's the main way to think about it is nose, 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 mouth, mouth, mouth. And then you can actually use these same gears, and we're gonna see some specific protocols about how to do this, but use these same gears to come back down to gear 1, okay? You can come all the way back down by shifting down gears as well. So this part isn't talked about quite as much, but we've been discussing a lot of breathing mechanics. So as a coach, I want you to also understand what should you be seeing move on your athlete, okay? Obviously you're gonna be looking for the mouth in or the mouth closed or not, but we also wanna be looking at what is moving. Are they breathing low? Do we see a lot of shoulder rise? And so again, as we move up these gears this way, just like we move to mouth breathing, correlated to mouth breathing is that upper chest and shoulder breathing, okay? And so as an athlete, as we're watching our athletes move up, we'll start to see them get into the chest and the shoulders. What I do not want you to hear me ever say is that we're never gonna breathe into our chest and never into our shoulders. Gear 5, heart rate zone 5, we want to see our athletes accessing as much volume as possible, and that means opening up the chest, opening up the shoulders, and we also want to see that drive out. Lowering of the chest, compressing the chest, lowering of the shoulders. So we want to see that. We don't want them to be stuck in belly breathing or something. We want them to be able to access that, belly breathing, low back breathing, but we also want them to be able to access into the chest, into the shoulders, raising the clavicles. We want to be able to open that up. That's why we do so much stretching through the rib cage to be able to open all of this up as well, okay? So you can take a look through this. You know, obviously gear 1, we're gonna be low in the abdomen, not gonna see a ton of expansion. Again, you're on that echo bike, breathing in for 4, out for 4. It should be pretty subtle, easy breaths still at that point. As we get into gear 2, we're gonna start getting into the ribs a little more lateral expansion. Gear 3, start to see a little bit of the chest expand as well. Okay, not really into the shoulders yet, but starting to see that chest expand. Gear 4, we're really seeing the ribs expand, the chest expand, maybe a little bit of the shoulder raise. Gear 5, we're seeing belly, back, ribs, chest, shoulders, everything is opening and closing like those bellows, just opening and driving the air back out, everything we can do, okay? You can see some of these cues here as well. If you want some help, you know, just kind of guiding your athlete. A lot of times in an interval type workout or a high intensity type workout with our athletes, we can give them some of these cues ahead of time if we know as the coach what zone we want them to be in. Because if we're thinking about a heart rate zone, we can give them a breathing gear, okay? We can program and say, I want you to be in gear 3 for this whole workout. Maybe that's if we're gonna be in gear 3, maybe that's gonna be more like a 10-minute workout, something like that, where we're pushing the intensity, okay? And we can program that into it and say, this is how I want you to be breathing. And I'll actually post a guide as well. It'll show the RPE, the rate of perceived exertion, if you use that terminology with your athletes. It'll show the heart rate zone, it'll show the gears they should be in, and it'll show some subjective cues of how they should feel, maybe what their internal dialogue is during the workout. And that just gives you a way to kind of pull up and show your athletes, this is the intensity we want to be hitting, and this is how it should feel. This is the gear you should be in. If we've got heart rate monitors on, this is the range we should be in, okay? And that just gives your athletes a bunch of different ways to understand what you're trying to get out of them. So I hope this helps kind of seeing an overall view of their breathing gears. Let me know if you have any questions.